David?
Yeah.
So I'm going to call the meeting to order and start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Tonight we actually have a special guest. We're going to have a presentation by Sustainable Westchester. Turn it right over to you.
Thank you.
Get you home.
Mayor, yeah, that's great. As I said, I'm used to also getting stuck behind controversial issues and being there till 11, but I appreciate your kindness.
We could move the agenda
So it's
around.
like, no, that's fine. And so, yeah, I'm here to give you an update on the Westchester Power Program. I was coming to Irvington and talking about Sustainable Westchester is like introducing honey to bears or something like that. You guys are very familiar, but it's important that we come around periodically and just alert people about the program, because not everybody knows. So this is hopefully going to be available to folks elsewhere in the village, and then it will give you a little bit of a taste of what's going on. Sustainable Westchester, again, for anybody in the audience who's not familiar, is a membership nonprofit, and the members are the cities, villages, and towns of Westchester. And as the name obviously suggests, our job is to put together programming to help the municipalities advance their sustainability goals. And everybody's in it, except for one little village on the up north of here a little bit, and the county itself is a member. And of course, our programming runs the span of what you'd expect. Obviously Westchester Power is in the energy category along with the solar stuff, but very importantly also is to take that power and push towards electrification so that you're leveraging it even further in defossil fuelizing yourself. Grid efficiency is part of that, and you folks are familiar with the Grid Rewards program, which helps to make sure that we are using that electricity in a very efficient way and not loading the grid down. And of course, we wouldn't be a sustainability organization if we weren't working on waste programs as well. And these days, it's, I think, very easy to draw the parallels between our climate crisis and the work we have to do to mitigate what's going on there and COVID. It's a multifaceted thing. It's a problem that requires collaboration. It's a long-term problem, and it's extremely dire for that. So the community energy programs help to bring the decision authority into the community to make efforts on those long-term chronic problems. And they also help to expand the participation in that effort among the residents. The Westchester Power Program, in principle, is a simple thing in the sense that it's a bulk purchasing program. But again, the key to it is, it's really twofold. One, it's the local municipality exerting its authority to run such a program and re-establish itself as the default decision maker in selecting that power supply. And then, of course, there's the opt-out mechanism is the other sort of unique part about it, which we'll talk more about, but is basically saying that it becomes the default. So the example I give is like if you move into the neighborhood without the program, your default supply is Con Ed, but with the program in place, your default is the municipality selected supply, but you still have all the options you had. You can opt out, go back to Con Ed, or select another supplier or anything. The program also is, of course, interwoven with our desire to help educate around these issues so that people have the tools to make their decisions to be partners in that. And of course, you guys are very familiar with the way it fits into the state programming and the availability of grants and things like that for doing this work. As for the Westchester Power Program itself, we're up to 28 members or participating municipalities. So the way we run our programs is we create these things, and then municipalities have the option to participate or not. So we're up to 28 with the addition of Tuckahoe earlier this year. And if I might say, the big kahuna Yonkers has been approved to enter as of a couple months ago. So we were trying to get them online to do that. We've been talking to them for like 3 years. So that's going to be a big boost to the membership for sure. And this, of course, is what it's all about. By moving to a zero emissions power source, we're essentially mitigating the carbon impact of our electricity usage, and this is the kind of level that we're talking about. Of course, nobody knows what a ton of CO2 actually is, so we like to use these little equivalents. They come off of the EPA has this greenhouse gas equivalency calculator, so we just plug the numbers in, and it helps to kind of get a sense, you know, in terms of cars or tree seedlings planted and grown for 10 years. But it is a huge impact, and amongst the NYSERDA Clean Energy Communities checklist, it is the number one impact item that a municipality can do. Again, our renewable energy is New York State hydropower. Actually, when we started the program back in 2016, we were using National Wind, and the Department of Public Service said, nope, we want you to be a part of our building up our New York State portfolio of renewable energy and helping us to meet our goals. So if you're going to make emissions claims, you have to be purchasing New York State renewables. So these are just examples of the places that are supplying those. And I kind of like this because, in a sense, it gives you a real sense that not only is it clean and green on our side, but the facilities themselves are beautiful. There's often like parks and recreation around them and things like that. So they're good for the people on the other end of the pipeline as well. In sum, the program is meant, as we said, to provide a renewable energy power source. It does set a fixed rate. We get those rates, we'll see in a minute, through an auction system. We lock in for a term, either a year or 2 years or 3 years, depending on what's out there on offer and what the best deal is. So people have a rate they can depend on, and it's a competitively bid rate. There's no penalties or any termination fees. So anytime you decide, you know what, I got to be some other place, there's absolutely no resistance. People, if they call us on the phone and say, I'd like to switch, you know, we just switch them right over. There's no selling or anything involved. And, you know, it's a public program vetted by the municipalities. People get notification letters before anything's renewed. So there's, you know, a lot of outreach done. We run virtual events, and these days we're going back to in-person events. How to read your bill workshops and things like that, just to help educate people about their energy bills. And of course, even the phone calls to our office to ask simple things like, what's this thing on my bill I see, for us are a fantastic educational opportunity. Because those conversations, you know, we're not a call center. We have people there who are living this stuff, and we'll have a 5, 10, 15-minute phone call where by the time they get off, even if they do opt out, they know the lay of the land. They know these other opportunities that are out there for them to participate, even if they don't have some reason they don't want to be in the program. Maybe they're interested in EVs, or maybe their you know, house could use some upgrades around energy efficiency, and we can point them there. So every single one of those phone calls for us is building that network of collaboration with people. We have Spanish language capabilities. Now if you call, there's one of the special lines you can get to, and my colleague Paul answers all those phone calls. So that's a really important thing for us, is to make sure that the Spanish-speaking population are also part of this. I think it's all too easy to think, you know, maybe they don't care as much or anything like that, in that it's like so not true. It's not funny. Just need to be able to bring them in to be a part of the dialogue. And of course, ultimately, again, about mitigating climate change. These are our current rates. The contract was renewed at the end of last year, so they started in January 1st. So the residential renewable, which is the one most people care about, is 7.41 cents. And this round, the small commercial which is kind of like your mom and pop shops. These are, you know, many times smaller than the residential usage. You know, it's not like a big commercial outfit, but they actually got a little discount over the residential, so it's slightly lower. I spoke about how we get those prices as of to the contract before last. We started using an online auction platform, which we're not up for renewal now till the middle of next year, but anybody who's interested, we did invite folks to come in, and you can get online and actually watch what's going on. And this was a series of 15-minute auctions, and they're bidding the price down, they're bidding it down, and then you get at the end of this curve, if somebody bids within the last, I think it's a minute, they kick it out for another few minutes. So they torture the bidders a little bit more. But it's nice because, you know, you can see what's happening, it leaves a record of things, and we think we're squeezing the last tenth of a cent out of those prices. So this is the whole history of how our rates have compared to Con Ed's price to compare. And I use that language purposely because the comparison has to be made to the sum of a couple of different pieces. It's the market supply charge, it's the merchant function charge, plus these two adders, plus the renewable portfolio. So there's a bunch of stuff that goes into having an apples to apples price. We'll sometimes get calls from people who look at their bill and they look at just the supply price and they say, oh, you know, it's lower, and we have to explain all that. So like so much of this stuff, on the surface it's not complicated, but as soon as you get into the weeds it is. So you see that gap prior to December was of course that long drought we had where the utility rates crashed with COVID and the low demand and all that, and left us stuck up there. But so far this year, with the start of this contract, knock on wood, we could never say what the utility rates are going to be, but of course the economy is coming back. The futures rates are all pointing upwards. All of the ESCO rates that you go out and get now are in the 8s and the 9s. So there's a good shot that we're going to perform well on this time. I know the world will change tomorrow, and that won't be the case, but it's looking pretty good so far. The past couple of months, it's been up like 8.5 again versus our 7.41 cents. Said the small commercial graph looks basically the same. And this again is just to show. This is the Department of Public Service has this sub-site called the Power to Choose, and we pop up there periodically just to see what the ESCOs are offering. We make sure that we're doing apples to apples, so it's a term fixed product, no cancellation fees and no renewable energy. And you can see again, those prices are starting to head up in the mid and upper 8s and even to the 9s and 10s. So right now we're looking pretty good. This is taking a typical count of just over 600 kilowatt hours per month for Irvington, and saying if you were in the program from the very beginning back in 2016, how would you have done in your terms of your monthly billings? If you were in the renewable energy supply, you paid a little bit more than, or a little bit less than $2 a month to be buying clean energy. If you opted out and you were in the standard supply, or opted into the standard supply, you'd be just about break even, so 8 cents or something like that difference on your average monthly bill. For obviously a lot of that, the contract 1 performed very well. Again, contract 2, we went in, we were behind on that one, and this current contract is right now, again, you're paying a little bit over $2 more, $2.50 more for being in the renewable supply. Actually, it's going to be a little less than that as of June. June was also an 8.5 cent month. So it's, in worst case these days, it's a couple bucks. I have a feeling that's going to reduce even more, and we're going to do pretty well. Again, the commercial looks very, very much similar. I don't know why it doesn't look similar on since launch. I'm suspicious about those first numbers, but again, in this current contract, you'd be paying a couple bucks more for the clean energy. Again, very important. We're not done with this. It's the platform for a lot of additional work, and the biggest thing now, and you've undoubtedly heard a good bit about it from us. You know, we've been building up to it for a couple of years now. Is the community solar, and we've been doing that on an opt-in basis for a couple of years now, where people actually have to sign up, and then they get this separate transaction that happens, but they end up with a 10%, almost 10% discount on their bill out of that, and they're helping to put more renewable energy on the grid, and it's more local as well because it's right here in this utility zone. So the big news is in the fall or late this year, we already submitted our implementation plan to bring it into the program as one of the opt-out offerings. So we would shovel those credits and that participation right through the Westchester Power Program as part of your opt-out participation. In the Con Ed territory in the beginning, it's going to start with the low-income customers because there's a more limited supply of solar farm developments within the Con Ed zone. It's denser, there's not as many opportunities. So we're going to take what comes along first, and that's going to be delivered to the HEAP customers, the customers who are on the home energy assistance programs, and then as more is available, we expand that out to more and more of the population. In the NYSEG territory, they're lucky; they've got more supply because they're close to the Dutchess areas and places like that where there's a little more room. But it is an exciting thing, and a really part of we're looking at this program as a launch pad and a platform for more activity really shines. And as far as that's concerned, then we are going to be coming back to the municipalities, back to you folks, with some documentation updates. As you may know, there's an underlying enabling law which was passed way back, years ago, and that law speaks specifically of electricity supply. It does not mention the community solar credits as another opt-out product, essentially, that would be offered. And the Department of Public Service Commission are very particular, especially with the opt-out offerings, because opt-out offerings essentially are a special dispensation that they give to municipalities. You do all the outreach, you do the education, and that way you have an alteration from the normal universal business practice rules, which require people to positively assent like that. So they do want us to update those enabling laws. We've already got the draft going and submitted to DPS for informal review. We're working with Pace Law Center on all these revisions. And the rest of the documentation is going to go along with that, which includes developer contracts and things like that. So you'll be hearing from us pretty soon about that. I mentioned grid rewards. Another example of something that never would have come along if we hadn't come together to collaborate around energy. People with cool technologies and great ideas come to us, and they know that we have the scope and the reach to be able to deploy these with scale, and this was one of those. It comprises really the first time in New York that residential customers were able to tap into this demand response income. Demand response is where the grid operator, Con Ed, gives a call a couple times a year or 3 times a year during the peak periods of the summer. They're like 4-hour periods or 5-hour periods, and to anybody who's participating, they say, please drop some load, and they get paid to do that. But they were doing that with big commercial entities and industrial entities, because obviously they had more load to shed, and there was no way to really connect to a residential customer. Well, of course, the answer is an app, and somebody developed that. It ties into what the Con Ed calls the green button system, or it's actually a statewide system, which allows that customers' information to come into the app, and they get an alert when these peak times come, and they say it's going to come, and if you drop your load, then you'll get some payment for that. And during the pilot last year, people made anywhere from like $50 to a couple $100 by doing this, which is, nice for just a couple of efforts like that. And it usually means like, turning your thermostat from 70 to 74 or something like that, or, there were some people who went crazy and basically did everything short of flipping the house main breaker and, going out for a soda or something. You don't necessarily have to go that far to participate. You can, be a little more measured about it. Fun program. Again, there is no immediate action for anything else. We're in the middle of the contract. It doesn't end until the middle of next year. And frankly, again, I think you guys are in a pretty good position, especially very recently the renewable energy component has bumped up significantly, and we're facing that with some of our other bids. And you're locked in and protected from that, during this time. So you're in pretty good shape. So just, in terms of those milestones, you wouldn't be hearing from us about any renewal stuff until, spring of next year. So, of course, during this time, we'll continue with our basic outreach. We want people to understand these programs and, of course, introduce them to some of these other opportunities that are out there that we're doing. For example, we're doing a series of Spanish language ads, and they're going to be out in a little while as well. And obviously looking for all kinds of opportunities to get the word out. So that's pretty much where we're at right now. Happy to take any questions.
Anybody?
Pretty comprehensive. I just remember I never did the grid rewards thing, and there was something that happened when I started doing it, and I don't know what it was.
Your Con Ed login maybe, or?
Maybe it asked me something, and I went, and
I think we've
then.
had 2 days already. Larry and I were talking about.
Yeah, I still haven't gotten my credits for the 2 days ago.
How much did you get?
Okay.
It says results coming soon. Check back in a few days from June 30th and June.
Okay. All right. So they're still getting the cobweb or
Yes.
getting the gears to turn there.
Well, was it because I remember mine said you earned the reward for the day, but then I don't see anything anywhere else. So I'm not, maybe it's delayed.
What's the app called again?
Grid rewards.
Just called Grid Rewards.
Yeah.
I'll try it again.
Was this for this year's?
Yeah,
Just
there were
this
2
year's.
days.
Okay.
They're back to back.
Yeah, I thought I saw something in the email traffic about some glitch going on, but hopefully they'll.
We saved energy either way.
They'll work that out, yeah.
So it was your Con Ed account number, so the
Yeah,
app
you need
had
to
in
log
front
into
of
Con
you.
Ed to
Oh,
log
the
in.
login.
It uses your smart meters to figure out. It actually tells you every day how much electricity, gas you use. It's interesting.
They're
Yeah,
certainly
part of it's just consciousness
tapped in,
raising
right,
for
but
that.
they're all
Yeah.
tapped into what I used to do. So.
Great. Well, thanks very much. And,
Thanks for inviting me in, and of course, anytime there's any questions or whatever, but I know we're doing all kinds of stuff with you all the time, so I'm sure there's no shortage of
we won't hesitate to reach out.
Right. All right.
Thank you.
Well, enjoy the rest of the
I'll
summer.
leave you to your business.
All right. Thanks a lot.
You can stay.
So,
Yeah,
Don't worry, plenty of
Yeah.
stuff to do yet tonight.
all right, take care. So, first up, we have announcements. We actually have 2 public hearings to schedule. The first is a hearing to consider a local law amending Chapter 213 of the Village of Irvington Code, Vehicle and Traffic, with respect to overnight parking on Center Street. That will be on Monday, August 30th. That's kind of an odd date for our meetings, but August is kind of an odd month for us. So we actually have our work session is actually on August 3rd, and then our actual meeting is on August 30th. We were talking, Larry and I were discussing maybe making the August 3rd meeting a regular meeting as well as a work session, in case we have a few things to do.
I don't expect.
Little bits of business,
We'll
but-
have some business to do, yeah.
But,
And they're
no.
far enough apart.
Exactly. So, but for the public hearings, they're going to be on the 30th of August. This one is really just adding Center Street as an overnight parking street.
This is simply to match up what the current practice is and match the code to equal what the practice was. For whatever reason, there was a practice going on and it was implemented for years and
It just didn't make
the
it
code
to the
never
code.
reflected it. So came to light recently, so.
I'm sorry to say, I don't have a picture in my mind of where Center Street is.
It's not near all the other streets, which is kind of an interesting thing. It's over by Hudson,
It's in Hudson View Park,
Yeah.
so off of Sunnyside.
Oh,
so,
okay.
yeah, it's on the side to Hudson.
Oh,
Hudson Avenue.
Hudson Avenue.
I know
Center
it,
Street,
okay, I
Park,
got it,
yeah, Park.
okay.
Which is why I thought it doesn't really go with all the other streets
Yeah,
out
right.
here.
Okay.
Yep.
And you're driving your kids around to your
That's-
friend's
that's-
house. Oh, yeah, they live over there.
So
Okay, got it.
I will make a motion to have a public hearing to consider local law and chapter 213 of the Village of Irvington Code of Vehicle and Traffic respect to overnight parking on Center Street for Monday, August 30th, 2021 at 7 PM. If I can have a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Next up is a public hearing to consider a local law amending chapter 95 of the Irvington Code, building construction to adopt the New York Stretch Energy Code, also for Monday, August 30th at 7 PM.
And just by way of background, of course, this came up during the North Broadway discussions. The board hasn't been briefed on this to any great degree, so we plan to discuss it at the work session on August 3rd. But given the distance of the meetings, and we thought it was appropriate to at least set the hearing, and then we'll work towards that date, so. All right.
So all these pages, yeah, this doesn't exactly explain it, this is just.
No, there's only a short cover
Yeah,
there,
okay.
Yep.
Yeah, we're going to have a presentation from the building inspector.
Yeah, well, we're gonna talk, he'll be in attendance, and we'll try to address some of the questions you probably have. Okay.
But I'll make a motion for public hearing to consider local law amending chapter 95 of the Irvington Code, building construction to adopt the New York Stretch Energy Code for Monday, August 30th, 2021 at 7 PM at Village Hall. If I can have a second. All in favor? Aye. Next up, we have correspondence. The first was from Joan Walsh, who wanted us to vote no to the North Broadway zoning. Chet Kerr actually wrote a glowing letter asking us to appoint C.J. Riley to the Nature Center. I think the only thing he left out is also that C.J.'s handsome. I think he said everything else, but it is a glowing endorsement of CJ, and I think we'll get to this later when we actually appoint him. I haven't heard anyone say a bad thing about him, and people are glowing about him and telling us if we didn't hire them, we were stupid, so Chet concurs. Last, we have Ann Ashton's letter, where, and obviously all these letters are included with the agenda, so I don't have to read them all. Janice and I talked about that offline during the week, that my practice of speed reading is probably not helpful since they're all here anyway. But to give a summary, I think actually her final paragraph sums it up pretty well. We need to put procedures in place that prevent developers from demolishing a landscape completely and then never putting it back together. Our municipal boards need to take preservation of the environment as seriously as they take FAR requirements or the look of public-facing fences. It's time to regulate environmental damage during development. And that's from Ann. So I thought it was an interesting letter, but everyone can read it at their leisure. That's all we have for correspondence, so we'll open it up to public comments.
Can I ask one
Oh,
question?
sure.
Because I think the letter opens up the possibility of, that we should be considering if things need to be done or not to further the goals of environmental issues, you know, the benefits of taking care of some of the concerns that she's seen.
As well as historic preservation, I think was part of it too.
Yeah, exactly. So it was so it looks like, I mean, it seems like there's a number of items in there that could be looked at, and that's what I would recommend that we do in terms of that particular letter is put it through a comb and see what we can get out of it in terms of areas that we should be talking with the planning board and the building inspector, et cetera, and see if there's solutions that can help.
Maybe that's a good follow-up, Larry, is maybe share the letter with the planning board, building inspector, and see which ones, you know, they think we should and can address.
I did write a comment, I shared it, so
Yeah.
that, Mary, it might be useful to pull that one out, the one that was more
Yeah.
specifically about what Ann was talking about.
And I'm not sure if we'll be able to turn that around for the work session on the 3rd, but we can always do it at that work session in September, but either one.
I mean, the bottom line from my perception, perspective is that things are a lot better than they had been, have been in the past. I think over the last number of years, the planning board site review process has gotten a lot more environmentally aware and, you know, respecting conservation, et cetera. There's still a lot of stuff to be done. we're much better off than we were maybe 10 years ago, let's say.
So is there room for improvement?
We're glad you're going and being there, and I know now it's not Zoom, right? So,
No, I actually missed the first non-Zoom
Oh.
meeting, but I'll be at the next one.
okay.
Now we'll open it up to public comments, since we have two people in the audience.
Good evening, Louis Lustenberger on Fargo Lane. Just one request, when the board in the future, and this is for future permits, that when they're presented to you, I think there was recently a film permit on Villa Laredo, and it was represented to the board that it was 10 cars. And 10 cars and
75.
limited, yeah, and inevitably what happened, Fargo Lane became a large parking lot along with Meadowbrook. So I would just ask, especially these larger venues that we have in Irvington, could be Octagon House, any one of them. You know, some of these larger venues do lend to larger events, which inevitably can, lead to a burden on the neighboring residents. So in this case, especially Thursday, things were much better, of course, Saturday. But on Thursday, cars were parked in private driveways. It was just, so all I ask is that in future applications, just please review that. I know in the past you've given conditional approvals, like I think it was a Villa Newts, that you basically said, all right, 48 hours notice to the local residents, no parking on public streets. Not saying that has to be every time, but, just take into account the various citizens who are the immediate neighbors to these type of events.
Absolutely. I think, I'll comment briefly on that, is that, as you mentioned, what you're approving our permit and what happened, were night and day. And I think maybe we didn't ask enough questions, but, I think what happens is almost like a cycle with us, like we'll have a bad experience with someone filming something, and then the next 3 people get be hammered by us, and then, then we have another one that something happens. So we had the one with the shooting it overnight, remember that? Literally explosions and gunfire in RZ Park.
I remember that.
So, it's like, we kind of learned from our past mistakes. So I did, as you said, I think Saturday was better than Thursday. It still wasn't perfect, but, I think we also discussed with the property owners as well as the company that ran it, that, they have to be much more forthcoming with us with what's going on. I mean, I think if Larry hadn't gone over and said, well, there's a stage, like, what's going on? They said, oh yeah, we're gonna have some people here. We wouldn't have been prepared at all on Thursday, because we thought it was literally 10 cars, 75 people filming. That's all gonna be contained on site, right? It was no big deal. So I remember again, on like Wednesday, Larry's like, yeah, we just went over there and it's gonna be a lot bigger.
Yeah.
Then it was also twice the size of what they told Larry was gonna be on Wednesday, 3 times.
Yeah.
So,
I know.
yeah, we learned from our mistakes for sure, but it's definitely a valid point.
And we had a very good dialogue with them between Thursday and Saturday. It allowed the police department to put together a very detailed plan on how to deal with it.
Mhm.
Obviously, if we had that same ability before Thursday would have been better. I mean, it still would have rained.
Yeah, no, the weather didn't help, yeah.
But the plan would have been better. So we learned a lot from the whole thing. I fully admit that we didn't have all the information. We didn't ask necessarily for all the information, and we certainly didn't get all the information. So we understand what you went through,
Good.
being residents there, and it's not the way it's supposed to happen. So look, normally I joke around with people about this, but every so often there's someone that's not happy about a film permit, and as a staff member, it's easy for me to say, well, the board had the information and they gave the permit out. There's nothing I can do about it. In this case, that was true, except they didn't have the right information. So it's not on them, it's on the staff. So we understand.
Okay, yeah, that's it. Thank you for your time and service.
Thank you, good seeing you.
So Larry, is there any sense of adjusting the permit rate based on the size of the event itself? Do we have that? I know it seems to be based on public versus private property, but not size of event.
Yeah, it's really subject to 2 days of the event. We might be able to extend it to a third with day in between.
But I mean, they do have to cover, police and secondary
Yes, which
support
is
services.
significant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was one question I got, that I'm not sure the public's aware, but they do reimburse us for any police time.
Yeah.
So that which is obviously our biggest expense.
Overtime.
Overtime, yeah.
Yeah.
Any other public comments? All right, we'll move to the consent agenda. Just 2 quick things. We had a slight revision to some of the personnel in the Rex and Park, so I don't know if everyone got it revised 7B. But, you know, it's nothing too crazy, so.
Couple of seasonal.
Just, yeah, seasonal, a couple extra seasonal
Sitting on
employees
top, yeah.
that weren't ready on Friday or whenever we published the agenda.
Oh, yeah, I see it here.
And then I guess the only other thing is, with the appointment to the volunteer fire department, I just like to always mention their names because it's such a great thing they do. So we can still approve the consent agenda, but I just want to thank Christopher Gallo for volunteering with the fire department. So I will make a motion to approve the consent agenda as amended.
I had one question that.
Okay, sure, go ahead.
It's just, it's nothing, you know, in the sense of, it looks like it's to the village's benefit ultimately, but I was wondering about the line item that was talking in the end of year balancing budget, or whatever it is, whatever that was entitled, approval of 2020-21 budget transfers and modifications. The item about increased water fund to reflect omitted Town of Rumbrook 2019 charges. That means, which way were those charges? It looks like it,
Yeah, it's not a good, it wasn't a positive for the village. So last year, we normally get billed kind of a supplemental amount from the town of Greenberg for water that we buy from them. In other words, we buy water throughout the year at a certain rate, and then at the end of the year, there's kind of a true-up of the expenses, once all the expenses are in for the pump station, which we run jointly with them. Last year, we were told that there was no bill forthcoming. And there was, in fact, a bill forthcoming. We didn't know about it.
Forthcoming, but it was coming.
Whatever it was, they weren't, I don't know if it was the onset of the pandemic, it's around March or April that they would have to send it to us. They weren't dealing with it properly. So they did ultimately catch up with that bill, and we had to make, but it was after our books were closed for last year. So it's just a timing difference. But it's not a positive, it's a negative in that sense from a village standpoint.
about 85,000 in
Yeah.
negative.
I also noticed that 11 and 12 under those transfers, it's exactly the same thing twice. It says transfer, it's about the Tiffany Room donations.
I'll ask the treasurer, but
It just looks like the exact same repeat of the,
yeah, it doesn't look correct.
It looks like,
There,
yeah,
yeah.
12 and 11 are exactly the same.
Yep.
it's like what Ken Bernstein used to do, he'd always find one little mistake.
Okay, I'll follow up.
I'm not picking on it.
So I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda. I got a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Next one's kind of a fun one. Appointment of a park groundskeeper. CJ, you missed, I didn't
Missed the
read
beginning.
Chet's letter. If you haven't read it, you should, and you should probably put it on your refrigerator.
Oh, here.
I would. But I said the only thing he left out was handsome, so, I don't think I've ever hired an employee that I've had so much unsolicited great feedback on. I think
There's the letter.
at least two people actually told me if we didn't hire you, I was stupid. So, and I'm not counting Joe, so he might have been the third who said that. But so I actually think this is probably one of the most exciting hires we've made. And I think, Joe, did you want to say a few words?
Sure, thank you.
CJ?
Well, first, I'm very grateful, and I'm also thrilled that Jim and Peggy O'Hara, along with Peggy's mom, they think so much of CJ, they wanted to be here to just show their support for him. You know, it's interesting, I've had the chance to be with CJ for many years now, and he's just a tireless worker, which is just so amazing. The problem I'm going to have is slowing him down. I've got people that he's talked to about new projects already that I don't even know what they're talking about, but it's going to be so great. In fact, outside, Peggy said she had a friend who wanted to come up and take some flowers because she wanted to make something out of them, and she wanted to know if it was okay. I said, well, in 20 minutes you can call CJ because I don't have to make that decision anymore. So there's great things ahead for the Nature Center. There really are. We're thrilled that we have the Shakespeare event coming up, which CJ will play a major role in. Thursday we'll meet.
Stage?
And I'm also thrilled to tell you that because of the event we ran Saturday, honoring the 25th anniversary of TWA Flight 800, one of the original members of the O'Hara Foundation, who has been very generous, after just walking around to me, said, "What do you need?" And I said, "Well, we've got a couple of things." She says, "All right, I'll give you 10,000. So I now have money to run the power from the building to the stage for the event and not have to spend any of our money. So she's just so impressed with the grounds. And so, listen, this is going to be great for all of us. He's probably the first employee I've ever had that DPW will drop anything to go help him. I mean, I go up there some days and he's got, whether it's Brian Alfini or Chris Donardo or Steve Caparel, I mean, he asked for, whether it be FIBAR or he wanted to fix the driveway before Saturday's event. They brought him some stone. I mean, they run for him because, he's infectious when you work with him. I'll stay far away though, trust me. But I thank you. Again, this is going to be very important for the department and for the village. You got a good guy, and he wanted to be here himself tonight just because he's so grateful. I'm going to give him a chance to thank you also. So thank you for this. Before he comes up, I don't know, did you mention Tom DiPaoli at all by any chance?
Oh, we did not, no.
Yeah, I just want to take 1 second on that before we give CJ his moment. Tom DiPaoli passed away. Tom's been in Florida for many years. Tom's a Korean War vet, longtime member of the Irvington Fire Department, was the superintendent of public works for many years. My first day working here, I worked with him and Don Casadone and Joe Slavin, some heroes in Irvington's past, and we were redoing the drainage system at Memorial Park. Tommy took charge, and we haven't had to touch the drainage system since 1986. Tommy knew his stuff. He was a great man. Chris's dad, Maureen's father-in-law, and really a big part. So he's someone that everybody should just take a second to think about. So it was great to see the turnout at the wake earlier, and the fire department paid a very nice tribute to him. So I just thought it was important to mention Tom tonight. So thank you again, and here's CJ.
CJ, before you speak, I just want to comment, to add to what Joe said. One, that the O'Haras are here is the example of what I wanted to say. You bring people to the woods, to the nature center, that Chet, writes a letter like that, and I know Dave's Wybell. These people don't have to come and do work. They enjoy coming to work with you. And it makes the volunteers want to come and do things. And it's just a great thing to have you be so infectious about what you're doing that people want to help you. And again, our village comes out to help you as well.
Thank you, Dr. Lunke. Well, I just want to say, Mayor Smith, Dr. Lunke, Mr. Gilliland, Ms. Silverberg, Ms. Kehoe, I just want to, Mr. Schaffer, the O'Haras, Mr. Archino, sir in the back. It's just been a dream come true, and to build on with so many brilliant, great people, both present and that have been a part of the O'Hara Nature Center in Irvington in the past. It's amazing, and just super thrilled to keep building on the swell that a lot of wonderful, great people have started, and to bring it to a whole nother level. And I can't thank you enough for giving me the opportunity to put my best self forward every single day and getting to kind of work with the Village of Irvington residents and staff alike. So thank you.
Excellent. But yeah, so, I think the Nature Center has been kind of a blank canvas, and I think you've started to fill it in around the edges. So I think we're all super excited to see what you do in the next couple of years, and no pressure to do it quickly, because you're going to do well, but it's been great. And as you said, I think the Shakespeare event is going to be so cool up there. It's just going to get a whole different group of people to come up. The fact that the rec and the theater are working together, and the Nature Center have helped bring that together, which is part, the O'Haras, and it's been 25 years, which is crazy also, and it was such a great event Saturday as well. It's just such a positive place, and I think there's a feeling at the Nature Center as soon as you walk in, and it's in all 4 seasons.
maybe a little less in the winter. But, you know, it's just a special place, and, you know, that whole side of the room has had a big impact, Joe just said over there, but it's such a big impact on making something that, you know, I think everyone knew we wanted to preserve the woods, and then the nature center just seemed like something to get some more usage out of it other than just real passive recreation. But the amount of things people have learned already, from, you know, apples to pollinator pathways to bees to, you know, deer gardens, all these, you know, there's a million different things. And, you know, again, I just can't wait to see what more happens in the next couple of years. The fact that there's going to be, you know, Shakespeare in the woods is just mind-boggling. And nobody in this room really had that. But you guys all said, go for it, do it, we'll figure it out.
It'll be my first Shakespeare play.
It's only 90 minutes.
Why am I not surprised?
So Brian, can I add just
Sure.
a quickie? I have a friend in Sleepy Hollow I was having lunch with. She said, "Oh, this is so cool, you're doing Shakespeare at the O'Hara." I said, "How did you know about that?" Anyway, she said, "Can I park up there?" Anyway, the word is spread by, you know, all that's happened. I just remember back, it was Nita Lowy, right, who
Yep.
started that
Yep.
whole, I remember being there and thinking, someday this is really gonna, and the O'Haras, you all did what you did, and now CJ, who I don't know, but I feel like I know you. And I'm very happy to be part of it, and I'm gonna be gone on Saturday, but it sounds like it's gonna be great. That's in my announcements later. Go to Shakespeare. Anyway, I said it.
By the way, I did mention, and you'll love this too, on October 1st, the weekend of October 1st, we're working with Judy Frimmer. In fact, we have a meeting with her Thursday. The theater is going to hold their outdoor festival at the Nature Center. 3 days of activities, movies the first day, games and activities the second day, and some type of a performance on the third day. So that's going to be a lot of fun, and Judy's got a lot of energy, and she's fun to work with. Her and CJ, I don't think we want to get close to the two of them.
The Tasmanian devils.
But that's another one that'll be on the horizon for us. So.
That's great. Thank you.
Well, should we go ahead and hire him?
Hi.
Before we change our mind, resolve to appoint Charles J. Riley III to the position of park groundskeeper, an annual salary of $67,500, effective July 20th, 2021, subject to completion of a probationary period of not less than 12 weeks and not more than 52 weeks. I'll make a motion if I can have a second.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Congratulations, welcome aboard.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll let you go do the fun stuff.
Yeah.
Thanks. All downhill over here. Did you get the email? Yeah. Good to see you.
Thanks, Todd. I'm so sorry I missed that. That's okay. It's good to see you.
Bye-bye. Thank
See
you.
ya. Now that makes sense why you were dinner. Next up is an appointment of a parking enforcement officer. Anything to set up here, Larry? or-
No, this is your full-time parking enforcement officer, being hired from a competitive civil service list. I believe the police department interviewed a number of qualified candidates off the list, and there's your recommendation.
Very good. Resolved to appoint Eduardo Santana de Freitas to the position of parking enforcement officer, an annual salary of $50,000, effective August 2nd, 2021, subject to completion of a probationary period of not less than 12 weeks and not more than 52 weeks. I'll make the motion if I can have a second.
Second.
All in favor? Approval of a pandemic response plan.
Oh, gosh, this is so many pages.
Larry's going to read the entire thing.
I was
for one
gonna read
report.
it all, and I thought,
We're going to go through each page.
please, summarize it.
So this, the pandemic response plan was a planning requirement imposed on the local municipalities by the state. You can obviously figure out why it came about, and it is an important piece of planning. To be perfectly honest, the requirement was required to be in place by the end of February, sometime in February. We were deep in on the police reform discussions at that point, so this kind of took a little bit of a back burner. But the plan has been reviewed by our two collective bargaining units, or unions, and they offered some very helpful comments that have been incorporated. I know board members had a chance to look at it as well, and I think we're good to go on it. So it'll be continually updated like any of our plans, but this is where we're starting.
So how much does this reflect the operational plans you were actually running under, under the last 6-8 months?
Right, I mean, a lot of it was drawn.
It seemed a
from-
lot of it was familiar, that's what
Right,
I'm asking.
right. In some sense, and I don't mean to minimize the effort, but in some sense, the plan really memorialized what
What
we
you
did
did.
over the last year or so, year plus. Not to say that we did everything right. Certainly, there were certain things that could have been done differently and better. But this was a way of memorializing it and not forgetting about what we did and the types of steps that you had to take. I don't think any of us, I'm not an emergency operations manager or anything like that, so the steps to take for a pandemic, I could not have even guessed to begin with. So this is helpful to have this down and, keep updating it. So, who knows what the next one will be like, or, I'm sure we'll have different characteristics, but it's a good place to start.
Was there anything when you read through this that you said, oh boy, we should have thought of that, or mostly not?
Not really. I think, to be honest, most of the hardest questions were those related to personnel
Yeah.
and A, how to deploy them, B, how to handle paying them or not paying them, quarantining, not quarantining. All those issues are something that is just not ever covered in any sort of union contract ahead of time or anything like that. So all of that was very helpful to think about and to write down so that in the future we're all on the same page of how we're going to approach it. But, and I will say that the union members and all of our employees, to their credit, were exceptionally flexible. I think if you matched up the things that we did with the things that we were probably allowed to do under the contract, there wasn't a lot of matching up there. There were a lot of things that were done that just were unprecedented. I hate to use that word all the time, but that really, if you had a series of employees or union members who were, trying to hold you to a letter of a contract, it would have been almost impossible to function. But the unions were very helpful and cooperative. So, and I think this plan reflects that, as a matter of fact.
It also reflects the relationship that you in particular built with the unions.
And the board in total, but yes.
Okay,
Great.
so you have to adopt it, right?
Yes, please.
Resolved to approve the public employer health emergency plan for the village of Irvington. I'll make a motion if I can have a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thanks for all the work on that. Hopefully, they can dust it off in 100 years.
Good luck.
Hopefully not in the fall. Next up is the capital budget. I know we discussed this, you have it at length at the last
Yeah.
work session, I can't think of the word, work
Yeah.
session, and kind of the new approach to it. But the floor is yours.
Okay, so the capital budget, as we talked about at the work session, it does look like it makes a lot of sense to fund the capital budget via our existing fund balance. We kind of analyzed that at the work session, and the way it fell out is that we were able to take one project that was deferred, just to describe a little bit of the flow of how this went. So we started out with a capital budget back in May, I think, that was pretty aggressive and largely unaffordable in the sense of there were certain aspects of that capital plan that were really would have caused problems for your budget season next year. It put a lot of pressure in that area. So we went back to the departments. We talked about deferring certain items and scaling back certain items. Most of those are still deferred and still scaled back, but there were a couple of items that we pulled forward to do as they had originally planned. One of them was the renovations to the library bathrooms, where we had contemplated either phasing that, doing one and doing the other, or possibly trying to seek grant funding, which is not out there for that type of
Toilet at
project.
a time.
Right, so we did pull in, and we do think it is much more efficient to do them both at the same time, or, you know, under the same construction contract. And so that was about a $100,000 project that we pulled, that we had deferred and then pulled back. The other was sidewalk maintenance, I believe, curb maintenance, where we had deferred curb maintenance work, $120,000 that was originally requested, pushed off for a year, that we pulled back. Everything else that we had deferred is remaining deferred. And so by doing so, we were able to pay for the entire amount of the capital budget, which totals about, sorry, I have my number here. So the entire amount of the capital budget, and I'm leaving the theater discussion out of this just for a second, and then I'll bring that back in. The entire amount of the capital budget, without any reference to the theater project, the theater ventilation project, would be $1,074,000, $1,074,000, and that would be of fund balance usage that we would recommend under this capital budget. The additional, the way this budget is reflecting the theater is to allocate an additional fund balance to the theater project, which would still leave $500,000 in either grant funding, which I know the mayor's actively involved in, or it may need to be a borrowing if you decide ultimately to do the theater project and you haven't been able to locate grant funding, then it may need to be a borrowing. But that would be the total amount of borrowing that you would have if that was the worst case scenario, of $500,000 specifically for the theater. But again, we're still trying to seek out grant funding or some other source
Yeah,
of funding.
we found at least 125,000 so far,
Right.
and then we're hopeful on the rest, so.
So we're letting it play out a little bit. We're not under any time constraints on that. We can, other than the theater's anxious to get the work done, but I mean, in terms of adopting any budgets, we can leave that as kind of a placeholder and
What's the source of the money?
Tom Abenanti,
So it's a state,
state grant, but it's kind of like his,
state and municipal funds.
yeah, it's like his appropriation that he can kind of.
right, the same as the Gateway, Astor Gateway project. Wasn't that a Tom
Yes.
Abenanti
Yeah.
thing?
Yes,
So
correct.
hopefully they're both still there.
No, they get new appropriations.
Each
every
time.
year,
Yeah.
Every year.
Yeah, no, he told me as of a week ago, it was still good, so.
Okay.
And then we're waiting, Unders through Cousins is hopefully going to be at least twice that, so, yeah, again, if we get, you know, as you say,
That's a
one,
good nickel.
yeah, so, you know, gets us
Good part of the way
a
there.
good chunk, so. So yeah, we'll keep working on that piece of it, but I mean, I think, I'm hopeful that if we, you know, somehow get in writing that we get the Abenanti piece, and then we can hear from Andre, because he was actually, when I talked to her on that Thursday, they were working on it Friday morning, so I'm hoping to turn, it was the perfect timing. If we'd waited a week, it would have been. I'm hopeful that we'll hear something soon, and then we can kind of, you know, hopefully go ahead and start the next phase. It's gonna be a while, you know, getting everything lined up anyway, so.
Yeah.
So Larry, where does that leave us in terms of fund balance?
So, you know, as we talked about at the work session, I don't have the actual schedule attached to this, but the schedule that we had out at the work session, we had identified our fund balance as being in excess by about 1.6 million. The numbers that I just outlined were just
1.6
short of
million.
1.6 million, right?
Okay.
Obviously, I mean, that was the exercise.
Coincidence?
No, it's not a coincidence, but but that was the exercise, so.
How lucky.
So, that would then draw back down our fund balance to be equal to, about 25% of the village
We'd still be on the high side.
budget, which is the very top end of
Yeah.
the range where I believe we should be, so.
We're not scraping the road, is what you're saying.
No.
We're not scraping the road.
No, not at all, no, look, I mean, you know Brenda and me well enough that we don't we're not gonna put the village at risk from that standpoint, from a financial standpoint, in that way.
Wasn't the fund balance 33% or something, and the average it's supposed to be, well, not supposed to be, but is aimed for is more like 20.
Top end of the
20-something.
range is 25%.
Yeah.
That's our recommendation. That's generally accepted. You know, higher than 25% in the state controller is not going to be happy with the levels that we have. I mean, that's taxpayer money. It belongs to either, you know, invest in infrastructure, whatever the case is.
So you still are getting us a fund balance policy eventually, right?
Yes, that's, as we talked about at the work session, that would be a wise thing.
Yeah, okay, I think so, yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
So the way I read the current draft is there's nothing right now in the theater. So that's, the 500,000 is more kind of theoretical right now?
So, I know the schedule doesn't break it out in a nice neat format, since this is something kind of new that we're doing this year, but, so the amount to be bonded is 0.
Yeah.
But of the amount, but the cost of the project is estimated to be $1 million. So what I'm telling you is, and not on this schedule, is that 500.
We're allocating 500 to fund balance.
500 is allocated for fund balance, and 500 is allocated for grants.
Yeah.
Now, like I said, the fund balance you control. If the grant funding doesn't come through as you expect, then you've got a different decision to make. It's got to come from somewhere.
Get the checkbook out. So maybe my $4,500 salary, whatever.
But in any case, right now, none of it is being contemplated for bonding.
Okay.
And you're right, after about 40 years, we should be able to pay for it in your salary.
Okay. So I mean, I think talking to Greg then, you know, we're contemplating getting it done. It just, as of tonight, we're not starting, tomorrow morning, we're not calling the contractors to come in yet because we're just waiting on the other $500,000.
You can handle it any way you want.
I mean, we could say we're going ahead with it, we just, the timing is uncertain as of the second.
But the fact is that the theater can't hold any events indoors until there's air conditioning set up
Ventilation.
for ventilation reasons.
Right. So,
So-
I
Of course,
think,
that's for new state requirements, for
I
the
think
code
so.
requirements.
Well, it's a little gray as exactly what they're going to require, and if it's going to be have state law banning it, or if it's going to be more, who wants to play there if there's no ventilation.
Right, I mean, that's the other end, is
Well,
that
yeah,
if there's
right.
no ventilation, then
Yeah,
people.
it's not like we didn't enhance it, we don't have any, you know, we can open the windows in the bathrooms. So,
Thankfully.
yeah, but you know, like it's
Yeah.
it's not, you know, since the governor, you know, kind of rescinded the executive orders, there's not like the absolute prohibition of it, but, you know, who wants to, you know, it's one of the things that most riders now is, you know, what's your HVAC system?
Functional.
Exactly, so it's an interesting quandary to be in.
right, so, but I don't think you should be thinking in terms of, we have to have commitments for the grant funding
We know
before
we'll
we even
bond it.
put pen to paper. I think you can do a little bit of work on parallel depending
Yeah,
on
because
how you
we're
feel about it.
basically saying we're backstopping it. If we
Yeah.
don't get the money, we're gonna.
Well, if you start working on it, that's effectively what you're saying.
Yes.
That you'll backstop it, but
And,
you all have to be comfortable with saying that, so.
well, are we saying that by accepting this budget, or?
No, this is a plan.
What starts
This is a plan.
what starts the ball rolling for the theater project, I mean, officially? I know it has been rolling, but what, you know?
Right.
What is the shot
If we approve this, is
Yeah.
it rolling?
Well, it approves the plan, but are you actually gonna start letting contracts for designers, engineers, all of that? I mean,
Don't we have to? I mean, the longer we wait, what is it buying us?
I mean, I would lean towards saying, I'm confident that we can get some grant money, and, you know, by the time we think that, you know, even if we say tomorrow, 100% go for it, it's not like we're not going to pay all up front anyway. So, you know, it's going to be, we have to pay some for the design work, and then some for this and some for that. It's probably, you know, the whole thing wouldn't be due for a year anyway, probably, right? So,
Right.
Frame expected.
was it like 6-7 months?
Yeah, something like that. but there's
The design phase
the
as well.
design work is pretty significant too.
So, and to me, I'm comfortable with saying, I'd like to try to move forward with it.
I think so, because we're really kind of losing a very good resource,
Yeah.
although they're gonna be out in the park, so that's good.
And the other side of thing is
In
that.
January, it's
Now we're
right
going-
up there in
We are
January.
going to be having, the opportunity to use it all summer too, which I think is great for camps and all that kind of stuff. It's going to be an extension or expansion of
it's
the
fair.
programming as
So
well.
it-
Its values will increase significantly once it's usable like
So
that.
doesn't the, I'm sorry, doesn't the bonding thing that Brenda always says happens in November, if you want to do that whole process? So if all this falls apart from Tom and Andrea and all that, then you're saying we would be committed to that other 500,000
Right.
through borrowing?
Right, but that's still not even locked into the November timeframe.
Oh, you can do it,
You can do that one on its own,
oh, I see.
if you had to, and then you can sync it up with the other one later. It's
Oh,
not,
Yeah, do a
all right.
band or something.
what's
A
that?
band.
It would be a separate band, yeah.
All right.
It's, that part of it,
We can figure it
Doesn't
out.
matter.
It's just if we're willing to say that we're
Committed to that.
We're committed to up to $500,000 if we can't figure it out, is basically what we're saying.
half of the
Half of the
beyond the
bonding.
fund balance that you're
Half a
already.
billion,
committed
half a
to.
billion, half a million.
You've been in your business too
Yeah,
long.
$500,000 in bonding potentially, if we decide to go forward, and I think I'm comfortable with that.
Okay, all right, that's,
I think it's
Anyone
important
isn't.
that we really get moving.
okay.
Yeah,
Right, that's the key. I
I
mean,
agree.
If
the
that's-
longer it's,
Yeah, that's more, that isn't really a resolution, that's just
No,
that's just a.
That's a directive.
Yeah.
That's a directive.
Exactly, so how about the capital budget itself, are we happy with the plan?
yeah, I mean, we talked about it at the work session. I think we went into a lot of detail. I mean, you,
I think it was a great idea too, Larry. Also, it was very timely that, our audit was just about finished, we had $800,000 of extra money,
Yeah.
so, in a pandemic.
Did they ding us for our fund balance?
No, our independent auditors are not.
They don't make a judgment that way?
They're not typically going to be too worried about that. It's the state auditors that would be more concerned.
It's amazing that you'd be in trouble for having too much. I mean, it's a good problem to have.
Well, but it implies you're
Overtaxing, right?
No, absolutely.
Yeah, no, it's not, I mean, it's a good bad problem.
It's
not,
exactly.
From a running the village standpoint, it's better to have more than less, but when you're dealing with residents and your constituents, of course.
Exactly. And I think you're right too, to bond more when we have money, it's like, taking out a loan when you have a lot of money sitting in your savings account. It doesn't really make sense. Especially with someone else's money in the savings account. so.
Exactly.
they always say that you can borrow X number when I don't need it. Yeah, sure, thanks. Anyway,
So resolved that the 2019-2021 is hereby adopted. I'll make a motion if I can have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Next up,
climate action.
we have an intermunicipal agreement with Westchester County for the Climate Action Planning Institute. Larry's been waiting for this.
Yes.
It's like happy,
Happy,
yeah,
exactly.
happy.
Where's the chair of this?
So this is the document we'll review page by page.
The one question I have for you, Larry, is how much of the in-kind time have you already invested in this?
No, actually not.
Not that much?
No, we've been sitting around waiting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's why I was just curious, because I feel like you were ready to pound something. I was talking to the other mayors, and they were like, this paperwork's like, it's too onerous, and, I was like, and you were like, oh, this is great, I finally got it. So.
Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to it. So just to refresh your memories on this, the village has been wanting to do a greenhouse gas inventory for its operations, and also a climate action plan that would be drafted in a way to address the emissions and to set targets for emission reduction. That's been something that this board has wanted to do for years. I've pushed back over the years and indicated that, to do that on our own with a consultant was pretty expensive. I mean, it was upwards of $30,000 to $35,000 or some of the numbers I was hearing. And it just seemed like, and all that is just to get a number and to be able to make a statement and set a goal for emissions reduction. So what we had the good fortune to do was to be involved in a municipality effort to apply for a grant through the DEC, which would give us exactly what I just mentioned, which is a greenhouse gas inventory along with a climate action plan specific to Irvington. And the grant was awarded in 2019. By late 2019, early 2020, we were expecting to start meeting as a consortium.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, and we were all ready to go. We had a kickoff meeting, as a matter of fact. And apparently someone determined after that meeting that in order to adhere to whatever grant requirements there were for the DEC, there had to be an intermunicipal agreement drafted to bring all of the municipalities into one agreement, and with, I guess, Westchester County being the lead municipality. That document is what's here, and this document took well over a year to draft. I mean, I've been waiting for it since early 2020. So when the mayor sent me the email about it being available, he asked about it, and I said, great, I've been waiting for it. So, and literally, that's it. So it's a simple agreement. Our village attorney, who I don't think is going to weigh in on this, she already reviewed it. It's typical of many of our intermunicipal agreements with the county. There's requirements on our part, but we're fully prepared for them, and that's it. So 60 pages of simple.
So our in-kind contribution seems to be more than most of the other municipalities.
Yeah, but it's all staff-based and time that we're going to put into it. So we expect to invest some time of our own. That won't be a problem.
And I think some of it was like Hastings, for instance. I think they've already done their inventory, so maybe it's just updating it or something. So
Yeah,
it's-
and we have a little bit of a head start on it too. So we have all of our energy data for the last, I think, 7 or 8 years tracked through an online system. So-
That was,
Facility
that
dude.
app, we
Yes.
had that hit dude.
Facility dude.
You have to mention it every time, Larry.
It works. Anyway, so we have all our stuff in one place, but we'll need our matching on that, but it's not any more than we expected.
Just curiosity, the certification regarding business dealings with Northern Ireland?
I saw that too.
Where it comes from. I really don't.
It's one of the things from the county, right? They,
I assume it's just standard county practice, but I was.
Yeah. I don't know where that comes from. I honestly don't. I don't know if it's
maybe
the
Mary
same.
Ann knows.
I don't know. Yes.
What came from?
The certification on business dealings with
Northern
Ireland.
Oh, I know. Isn't that funny? I showed that to my husband too.
I showed it to my husband.
Yeah, I showed it to mine, it was a label.
No, I think it has to be in all, it's all kinds of, in all county contracts. There's always this whole set of riders, and yeah, that's an odd one that shows up a lot.
Yeah.
But the fact it's a whole separate schedule is
Yeah, it's
so odd.
crazy. So unfortunately, we don't have any, so we're.
No researching necessary,
Yeah,
I was
we're-
curious.
Yeah,
It's
I think it- there was-
McBride principles.
With Brexit or something, you know.
I bet it's before that, probably before the Good Friday compromise.
Okay. All right, so,
McBride principles, I'll have to Google that.
so did Mary Ann have any comments on this contract?
No, it's,
No,
she's
she didn't.
reviewed it. Yep.
No,
Resolved to authorize the village administrator to execute.
I mean, I had comments, but they were.
Yeah, right, right.
Yes. Yep.
Resolved to authorize the village administrator to execute an intermunicipal agreement with Westchester County for the Climate Action Planning Institute. I'll make the motion if I can have a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
There's so many pages.
Finally, huh?
Yeah. It was so funny, because all the other mayors were complaining about it. I forwarded it to Larry, and he's like, oh, great.
He's
And I
got
was
it.
like, first I thought he was being sarcastic. No, I've been waiting for this. I was like, all right.
The women and persons of color, I've seen that before.
Reports of boards, standing committees, and officers. Start with you, Mark?
Yeah, I mean, the most interesting thing that was out of the ordinary is we had the first meeting of the South Buckout Street Memorial Space Committee, and Larry was running the meeting very effectively, and we had a number of people. Not everyone was able to make that first meeting. What was interesting was the intent was to try to figure out of the various proposals, responses to our request for quote. Connie and I and Larry had gotten together and had filtered it down to, I guess, a top 4 that we thought out of the 6 or 7. And So it was interesting that universally everyone that was there at the meeting basically had the same take on number 1 and number 2. So the 2 were Studio Zwed?
Word?
Zwood?
Zood,
Zood,
yes.
okay. Which
And
is
the other
like-
one was which?
facility Zood?
And the other was
Mass Design Group.
Mass
Mass.
Design, yeah.
Right.
And so everyone was pretty excited by the possibilities. There was a lot of talk about wanting to be sure that folks coming in knew that they had a larger space they could potentially work with. And so the next step is for some Zoom meetings to be set up. So those 2 top contenders can be talked with directly and final decisions can be made. But it was a very upbeat meeting, I thought. It was not, there was not much disagreement. Everyone had sort of, I thought it would be a little bit more contentious, but everyone's views pretty much coalesced.
Great.
So that's my long-winded, short report.
Okay.
Larry?
Hot off the presses. Summer Day Camp is on with week number 2. Over 180 campers and a great staff. We're grateful for the support of the staff at the Main Street School. The Senior Center is open Tuesday through Friday from 8 a.m. till 1 p.m. Food shopping every Wednesday, exercise every Thursday. Our tree inventory grant with the DEC to conduct a tree inventory in the Irvington Woods Park is progressing. Tennis courts are open 7 days a week. Reservations are recommended. Matheson Park will open to the public on Saturday, July 31st.
Whoa, yippee.
On my birthday.
Perfect. Is that what we held it up?
The park will be open daily after the 31st. There will be no group reservations for the opening 2 days. Reservation system for tables and barbecue grill will open online on August 2nd, 2021. The website to use for reservations will be posted online later this week. Visit the village website and the Irvington Recreation Facebook page. Park users are reminded that launching, landing, or flying a drone over any village park is illegal. Please report the drones to the IPD. Teenscape starts session 2 on tomorrow on the heels of a great session 1. The O'Hara, the Summer High School O'Hara Basketball League, sponsored by the O'Hara Foundation and ISCAB, is into week 3. And last of all, Saturday, July 17th, the O'Hara family recognized the 25th anniversary of TWA Flight 800, which took Jack, Janet, and Caitlin O'Hara from us. A new plaque was dedicated honoring our friends.
Really love it.
Karen?
Yeah.
All set, Mike?
Just thinking, Larry, if you could ask, I had somebody ask me if the drinking fountains in Scenic Hudson could be reopened. Maybe you could ask Joe about that.
Larry, do you have anything?
Do anything about that?
No, I don't, but I'll,
Okay.
I mean, I know they were.
They've been shut up, but,
I'm not sure if there was any thought about it, or I'll ask.
okay, thanks. Just thinking about that. Well, you heard about the theater. My theater report was on Go to Shakespeare up in O'Hara Nature Center. But there's also the outdoor film that was going to be shown, but it was the same night as the practical thunderstorm major, so they canceled that. So they're going to be those in August also. So in other words, there's a lot going on in the summer on the basis of the theater, but it's all outside, of course. In my liaisonship to downtown development, we've had traditionally made a list of all the restaurants in town and made them available online. So as you know, a lot of things changed recently. So with the help of volunteer Sarah Kelsey and Karen in Larry's office, that list is now correct for this moment anyway. And that's online, and it's at the Historic Hudson River Towns site as well as out there in the Glass. So people can get copies, mostly just run it off yourself, but I thought people should know that. We're really, we're obviously concerned when any restaurant closes. That's Brian always says when we came in, we thought, you know, we had a problem, when it was a problem that things were closed, and then it was, nobody could park because it was so busy. So, anyway. The other thing you've heard me talk about is the audio tour, the mobile audio tour. So these little rack cards are available, and although you don't really come in the lobby of Village Hall much anymore, Karen would give these to anybody who wanted them, and they describe these driving tours, walking tours. I did if you haven't done the walking over the bridge tour ever, that's very cool. But these describe it, and businesses should actually know about this in town. We don't really have a chamber that wants to do that kind of volunteer work, but if somebody's listening and said, I'd love to go deliver these around to all the restaurants, I told Karen I would leave them with her, and she could give these to anybody who wanted them.
Connie, I guarantee you that places like Red Hat would love to have them.
Yeah, they should. Okay, you can take some if you're going down there. They're really beautifully done.
Yeah.
And they describe how to use it. And the other thing is the tour's got a whole write-up in the Roost, the Irvington Historical Society's newspaper. So if you wondered, you know, what it was like to actually do the driving tour, Barry Seaman did it. Actually, I went with him. So it describes what it's like to be on that driving tour. And when I've told people about it, I mean, you can learn about all the history, like all the way up the Bear Mountain Bridge and over at Fort Montgomery and down to Yonkers. I mean, it's very cool. So anyway, it promotes Irvington in both a part of the driving tour and a walking tour. And when you go onto the bridge to the kiosk, push those little buttons and you find out, oh, there's a restaurant called Red Hat. Let's go there. So in order to keep that up to date, Larry and Karen and Sarah end up having to do a little bit of work, but it's really a good way to promote our lovely village. And that's the end of my report.
Janice?
The library has two wonderful programs coming up that we just missed. The stuffed animal sleepover,
Oh,
which occurred
no.
last week, which was probably the highlight of the summer. That was truly wonderful. Adult summer reading series will include Cowboys, Cattle Trails, and Cow Towns of the Old West. That's on Saturday, 7/24, 2 to 3:30 p.m. And this, you can do this online. It talks about the cattle being driven from Texas to Kansas for shipment to the Armour Meatpacking Plant in Chicago, and what happened when the newly paid rowdy cowboys spending their monies in saloons, gambling halls, or the red light districts, gunfights, Bat Masterson, Wyatt Earp. Anyway, so that should be fairly lively. There's also
be
an
lively.
adult summer reading series. The nonfiction book club is on World of Wonders, and I will apologize for how I'm going to mispronounce the author's name. It's Amy Nezhukumatathil. World of Wonders in praise of whale sharks, fireflies, and other astonishments. And always on the library website, there's lots of activities listed, and the library is open now for browsing. So it's great to be back, and by all means take advantage. No bathrooms up. The
And they're
fire
serving
department
baked
also
beans,
noted,
right?
which has already been mentioned, the passing of former Chief Thomas De Paoli, and also of former retired member Joseph Garcia. In August, they're training with the Westchester County Department of Educational Services in ladder company operations and gas emergencies. And that's it.
Great. Village Administrator's report.
So, tomorrow I'll be participating with, in a joint meeting with the county to develop an updated hazard mitigation plan. The village does have a hazard mitigation plan that we've done jointly with the county over the years, but it has expired and it needs to be updated, so that process is going. Should have been updated last year, but everyone was a little busy.
We had our own hazard.
Yeah, exactly. So that's tomorrow. And I can do the treasurer's report if you'd like.
Sure.
So
Larry,
the,
before you get to the treasurer's report, one thing for you.
Yes, of course.
I saw that there was going to be milling and paving on Main Street between
Yes.
Ferris and Broadway.
Yes.
I thought we had news that Con Ed was coming back to change pipes.
Well,
Was that a rumor that wasn't true?
No, The milling and paving is from Ferris on down,
Oh,
and
it's-
that's Con Ed doing their own milling and paving.
Oh, that's, sorry, I read it the wrong way. It
Yeah.
says from Ferris,
It's Ferris
it's
on down.
downhill, yeah.
Yeah. So that's to restore all of the work that they did, well, actually, last year, they did most of that work, early this year. So no, that's, but the other part is still under investigation.
We don't now need more details.
And related to that, I asked Larry if he could get his best contact to try to see if they have any kind of even super tentative schedule, because our understanding is they're going to replace almost every pipe in their territory. So if they know that they're going to be starting on, Fargo Lane in, the fall, if we can kind of get a list, even if it's tentative. So that's something I asked Larry to get, so we can send it out, because I get a million questions about comment all the time,
Every
and I
pipe in the city, in the village, is that it?
in their entire, in all of New York, their entire territory almost. Yeah, that's our understanding, but we don't know which ones are not, if it's just like a certain age. But yeah, from like what I've talked informally with the Con Ed folks about, they said, their goal is to have all new pipes everywhere, because they're all leaking some amount, because they're most of them are old, and ever since that explosion in the Bronx.
Oh, God.
So, but it's like, if that's true, then this means this is gonna be like a decade of this, so we're trying to get, they must have some time frame and some plan. So even if you could share it, and we know it changes, but,
Also ask them if they can make sure they only have to do it once.
yeah, you might wanna double check it. True. Unbelievable.
By that time, we could have paid for the underground.
Unbelievable.
Maybe we should
Yes.
For the treasurer's report, I'm just reporting that Brenda had a very successful audit last week. She's taking a little time off after that, which is good for her. But it was successful. The auditors were pleased with the work that they did, and she provided them with everything they needed, so.
We hear that
Went well.
every year.
It went well, yes.
That's amazing.
Yes.
Thank her very much. What a job. Oh, yeah, yeah.
That's it.
Village Attorney's report from the big screen,
Done.
public comment,
Public comments. No. Okay.
review of action
I
items.
have, yeah, lots actually. So I'll be sharing Ann Atchison's letter, planning board building inspector, along with Mark's comments that he had with that, to try to see what can be addressed. There was a possible duplication on one of the resolutions that you adopted for the budget transfers. I'll investigate that with Brenda. Drinking fountains in Scenic Hudson Park, and Con Edison gas main replacement contacts.
Solve it.
Re-replacement.
That's it.
Thanks.
Executive session?
Yeah, so I will make a motion to adjourn to executive session to discuss the volunteer board.
Yeah, not on the agenda.
Not on the agenda yet. If I can have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Is there a link, Larry?
No, so I think what's gonna happen is,